obviously follow Courageous Discourse, which is his Substack. But I just want to thank you for that, because you've been a godsend to me, an absolute godsend.
Thank you. You and I were together actually from the very beginning. So I think Americans are going to look back and say, who's really been there for 5 years and who just showed up overnight, on this scene? Because Americans got sick starting about 5 years ago now, and they've lived through this. And many are questioning, who are some of these new characters and where were they 5 years ago?
Well, we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. What does it mean? Does it mean a reckoning for the vaccine injured? Does it mean justice for people who were abused by their own government agencies in the dark days of COVID-19? Or does it mean red food dye number 77 and fluoride? We're going to address some of the issues that they're talking about from your perspective. I would like to talk about the fluoride issue, and I would like to talk about some of the food issues and the seed oils, because a lot of these things, Dr. McCullough, are pretty bad for us, right? And these are necessary discussions that America should be having about what we're ingesting, what's in our water. How amazing is it that the government was just dumping fluoride in our water for like 100 years? It's just so.
No, it's not, but it's not that simple. Environmental concerns come up over time. So, if we were to go back 130 years ago, Shannon, do you know what mothers did to soothe teething pain of babies when they have, their molar eruptions? They used topical mercury preparations that were so toxic to these little kids, and they just had no idea. The very first versions of Coca-Cola and Chianti wine were laced with cocaine, and people became addicted to this. So, with all of these products and then interventions, we do need to revisit them. And so, since you mentioned fluoride, fluoride was introduced in the water supply in 1945 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And to this day, only about 72% of Americans actually have fluoride in the water in their communities. A lot of people don't. Therethere's also fluoride in just groundwater. If you get it out of a well, those who drink filtered water filter out the vast majority of fluoride.
Right.
But I'll have a Substack coming out in a few days to go over the sources of fluoride from our diet, from drinking milk or coffee or tea, through dental products. It turns out dental products are a huge exposure. I mean, the biggest exposure at all would be swallowing some toothpaste. If you swallowed a gulp of toothpaste, that would far exceed anything you'd ever worry about in the water. Okay. But the reason why fluoride, and the CDC has a statement out this year about, why did fluoridated water even come out? And they highlight the fact that, as a general synthesis of the information, there's been about a 25% reduction in dental caries, both in the primary teeth of babies and the secondary teeth, and that concerns have risen in areas where the concentration in the water could be too high, and particularly kids who swallow toothpaste. That's the biggest one.
Right.
So in 2016, the Health and Human Services commissioned a national toxicology program to review fluoride exposure in neurological development. And what they found is that in studies, if the amount of fluoride in the water exceeded 1.5 milligrams per liter, that in fact it was associated, in 4 studies, it was associated with a cognitive decline in the children. Now, these happened all outside the United States. There were no U.S. concerns, but it was observed in Canada, China, India, Iran, Pakistan, and Mexico. And so they said, listen, the U.S. standard is keep it less than 0.7, which there were no safety concerns. So my point is here, Robert F. Kennedy tweeted out that on January 20th, the Trump White House, I'm reading his tweet, will advise all U.S. water systems to remove fluoride from public water. He says it's an industrial waste. associated with arthritis, bone fractures, bone cancer, IQ loss, neurodevelopmental disorders, thyroid disease. My point is, here's an opportunity for Robert F. Kennedy and the administration to kind of re-engage the academic scientific community, the those who study water safety, those who make dental products, the European Society of Dentistry, the American Dental Association, American Pediatric Dental Association. Yeah, it's been in the water since 1945. There's no immediate emergency.
Right.
Now is a time for Robert F. Kennedy in an official position with the Trump administration to actually do the right thing. In leadership, and I've had major leadership roles in my career. The whole goal in leadership is you arrive at an issue, you
Right.
identify the stakeholders. You've got to identify the stakeholders.
Yeah.
And then you build consensus and then choose a direction.
Right.
And that would be my encouragement to Kennedy, who has never had a leadership role in a major organization before, to actually go through these organizational steps. I think the spirit is on the right track, but to go through the organizational steps, it doesn't need to be something on January 20th. I personally could live without fluoride in the water. I don't think it's that big of an issue, but we'd want to hear from the dentists. We'd want to hear from others and all the stakeholders.
My concern with the hyperbolic nature of some aspects of MAHA, when I hear they're poisoning our food, they're poisoning our water, they're poisoning our air, it brings me back to COVID-19 and the fear porn of you're all gonna die. This deadly contagion has been, and I don't like that strategy, because then, to your point, it moves people to an emergency footing, and then they take rushed approaches. And I'm very concerned that there are going to be big governmental bureaucracies erected in Washington, D.C. to go after every farmer, every food producer, everyone, across the United States of America, with new rules, new regulations. Of course, Monsanto and all of the government connected food organizations will have exemptions because they're dumping money into Washington, D.C. And I don't want that to happen. I also think that it is somewhat of a distraction. I mean, from your perspective, there's fluoride, and we would like to get that out of our our water supply. It makes
hang on. We don't know if we want to, quote, get it out of our water supply, because we want to understand the risks and the benefits. We want to hear from the stakeholders, and then have reasonable governmental action. We'd want the people who did the 2016 National Toxicology Review, and synthesize the IQ data. We want to hear from them. Remember, Robert F. Kennedy is not a doctor. He's not someone who's qualified in the scientific field. He needs to be surrounded by very, very capable, in this case, very capable dentists, environmental toxicologists, and others, and work through this. We don't want to jump to these conclusions. Now's a time for being rational. Like I say, there's no emergency. This has been, we've been doing this since 1945. Many people who are concerned, they drink filtered water or bottled water anyway. If I gave any advice on my upcoming Substack, I said, well, listen, while this is being vetted, if you're a parent, you may want to choose non-fluoridated toothpaste, just regarding, and you'll see the table that I provided from a scoping review this year regarding the concentration of fluoride in some of these products. So my point is, as a doctor and a public figure, we can be reasonable about this, Shannon, and not hyperbolic.
No, I think that is absolutely the posture that we need to be taken. And when you look at something like, what are some of the other agenda items of MAHA? We're seeing a lot about Kellogg's and cereal and dyes and food, and there's a lot out there. And to your point, it's intense, and it makes people fearful about everything that's in their food. What would you go ahead?
Well, let's take that one. There was a great tweet out today by Dr. Lynn Finn, who's a pathologist here in Texas. She goes by Finderella. You probably like her.
We love
her,
Lynn Finn. We
her,
love
her,
Lynn Finn and the Shannon Joy Show. I follow her, of course.
her Twitter account.
Yes.
But Lynn said, listen, there's no food mandate here. No one's mandated to eat Twix or Lucky Charms or Frosted Flakes.
Right.
Again, Frosted Flakes entered the market in 1955, it was called Sugar Frosted Flakes, and the name was revised in the mid 60s to Frosted Flakes, Lucky Charms, and Twix, and all Captain Crunch. They've all been around for decades. So there's no immediate emergency. Now, what's reasonable in all of this? To have a review and if experts, and then we need the U.S. Dietetics Association. I mean, we need real experts to come in and tell us, is there a concern or not? And is it to the point where we should make a change in the food supply? One area, my Substack out today, which I think it was probably the easiest low-hanging fruit for MAHA, this new food movement, and Robert F. Kennedy, is on trans fats. Now, remember the seed oils that Kennedy is mentioning, vegetable oils, really what he means to say is trans fats. So these are forms of oil that have been through industrial methods super saturated. And when they become super hydrogenated, they're directly atherogenic. They stimulate the production of LDL cholesterol. This is well known in the medical literature. And in fact, in 2009, the American Heart Association said, listen, we want legislative action to get this out of the food supply. This is 2009. It's 15 years ago.
Wow.
Mayor Bloomberg of New York City in 2006, they pulled the trigger. They said, listen, we are getting these trans fats at least out of the fast food supply because they're used in McDonald's and Chick-fil-A and all these places. They're used in fast food because if you take a hamburger and fries and you use trans fats, it can stay under the lamp waiting for somebody to buy it for about 8 or 10 hours. And you can't tell the difference at all if it's freshly made or not. Right. So the point is, listen to this. In New York, they got it out of the fast food restaurants and they did an ecological study, and rates of heart attack went down since they've done this. So give Bloomberg and New York City credit that getting trans fats out of at least the restaurant food supply made an impact. So, the World Health Organization has aspired to do this. They had a 2018 initiative. They still have it underway. And also the FDA has been trying to do this. They have an open comment period that they went through earlier this year to kind of finally try to get this over the finish line. So here's an example, again, where Robert F. Kennedy and those interested in food can actually work with these entities who've been on this for 15 years.
Right.
Again, identify the stakeholders, and let's get this over the finish line with the full backing of the medical community and the public health community.
I think in all of these things, and, I understand everyone going into government, they want government solutions, big government solutions, and I get all of that. But at the same time, I share Lynn Finn's sentiment that this stuff, while it might be important, is peripheral in terms of what we need to be addressing the actual crisis in the US today. And that is the devastating plight of the vaccine injured. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. We just saw Breanne Dressen's tragic case brought by Aaron Siri and I Can Decide, an amazing ruling by the judge that is allowing that case against AstraZeneca to move forward. So she has standing. Their motion to dismiss was denied. We covered that earlier in the program. And so all of these kind of these side discussions about trans fats and fluoride, they're fine, but we're missing a massive elephant in the room. And there are people devastated by these vaccines, not just these vaccines, but as you've mentioned, the childhood vaccine schedule and the risk profile of some of these vaccines for tiny little babies on the first day of life, this is a discussion that we aren't even allowed to have yet with this administration. We're not even allowed to put it on the table. It's why we put RFK in the position that he's in, to bring these issues of informed consent, a repeal of any mandates, and also the removal of liability protection from these pharmaceutical products and these pharmaceutical companies. None of those things are being addressed, which is and most importantly, the immediate need of so many vaccine injured people today, right now, who are absolutely suffering. None of that is on the table for MAHA, and I'm not okay with that.
Well, there's certainly a lot to unpack. So I've had certainly many media spots since Tuesday. And, as a medical doctor, an internist and cardiologist, I am seeing patients every day, every minute with vaccine injuries and disabilities, sadly reporting the deaths to the VAERS system. And we have, it's a tweet out today by Edward Dowd that where the extrapolation is we could be close to 600,000 Americans who have died with the COVID-19 vaccine, and having two presidential candidates, post World War II, not recognize that a war went on, right. Just like, oh, well, we didn't have World War II. So, and even J.D. Vance on his Joe Rogan interview said, quote, we're not allowed to talk about it. I thought that was an interesting reveal there. But, I've called just as a doctor who's, is published on vaccine safety as anybody in the world, and I'm seeing patients real time, I've made the call in the U.S. Senate in 2022. The World Council for Health also formally called in 2022 in the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons. These are both physician-led, evidence-based, consensus-driven organizations that have called for the COVID vaccines to be removed off the market. And the reason why this is so important is that the group of individuals who effectively are forced to take this now are children, because it's on the CDC ACIP schedule. And in many states like yours, Shannon, there is really no way out of it. There's no
way
religious
out.
Or medical exemption. So the kids are accumulating dangerous messenger RNA and spike protein. We have no understanding of how bad the cumulative toxicity is going to be for the children. Now, adults are not taking the shots. It's very important. CDC data indicate, at least through April of this year, it's like 1.6% of people taking shots. Even nursing home workers, based on a study we have out on Courageous Discourse, 10% of nursing home workers have taken a shot. Now, there's no one's taking it. And so it's certainly unfair that the children are forced to take it, and extremely dangerous. So I think job one for MAHA is, and because HHS won't do it, the FDA won't do it, the CDC won't help at all, and the vaccine companies aren't doing it. This is something that must be an executive order on day one to remove all COVID-19 vaccines from the market. COVID-19 vaccine recall is such a high priority compared to the other public health concerns we've discussed, which are essentially have been worked on for years. The COVID-19 vaccines have been a 4-year debacle. They have to go as priority number one.
I would support that 100%. Typically, I don't love executive orders, but in the case of what we're looking at today, the data is in. There is such a mountain of data, anecdotal, causal relationship. We've had autopsy reports. There's data from all over the world. I mean, that we now know what is in some of these vaccines. It is overwhelming evidence that these are dangerous to the human body. They have to be recalled immediately. And so in that case, I would support an executive order 100%. And I think that would do a lot for the medical freedom movement in terms of trusting Donald Trump and his administration, and putting to rest some of the concerns about the people surrounding Donald Trump, people like Susie Wiles, who worked for a big pharmaceutical lobbying company for many, many years. She's still on the board. She's a co-chair of that company. And, people are very concerned about that. I think that you're right, that these vaccines need to be pulled from the market. Do you think it's a possibility?
Well, let's hope that we got nearly 70 days to go. Let's hope that, we do have a congealing around these health priorities, and, fluoride in the water, getting out of the water January 20th, as Kennedy's marquee tweet right now, is he's going to need some critical direction from experts, medical doctors, those who are really dealing with the vaccine issue. He clearly has strayed, and he needs expert direction. Anybody who's not a doctor in Washington honestly needs expert direction on the vaccine. So we hear a lot from non-experts. But we need, and when I mean experts, I mean people who have published on vaccines, understand the data, have dealt with data safety monitoring, and are dealing with vaccine injured patients right now. There's no substitute for that boots on the ground, firsthand approach. Now, you brought out the other major issue, which I think would rapidly clarify concerns about vaccines, and that is rescinding the 1986 Vaccine Injury Compensation Act and removing the liability shield for companies. They almost certainly would immediately pull unsafe vaccines off the market, ones that have a mortality signal, old and new. By the way, the new products with mortality signals that I've already made the call on national TV have been the respiratory syncytial virus given in the third trimester of pregnancy associated with preterm delivery and babies, premature babies actually having, premature babies, by definition, born before 37 weeks, high rates of intracranial hemorrhage, permanent disability, death in the NICU. And then actually removing Beyfortus, which is the new monoclonal antibody given on day one with no assurances on safety. Now papers are coming out showing it's probably going to drive RSV resistance, and it's associated with increased RSV mortality. So we just can't allow these new products to be on the market and then see what the companies do with the older products, and then obviously commission a safety review. Kennedy, I think appropriately has said, listen, we don't want to take away people's vaccines, but we do want the companies to produce safe products. And one thing for sure, Shannon, we don't want anyone ever to be mandated to take any vaccine or medicinal product under any circumstances
whatsoever. If you guys would like to go to makeamericahealthyagain.vote, that's makeamericahealthyagain.vote. That is our organization. We put together, Dr. Peter McCullough was the lead signer on that document. It is a petition to Donald Trump that is demanding a removal of all mandates. So no mandates for any vaccine of any kind at any time, regardless of emergency or any other type of extenuating circumstance. And also removing the liability shield protecting the pharmaceutical corporations. 2 agenda items. We didn't mention the removal of the COVID-19 vaccine from the market because that was more complicated in nature. But that petition has garnered the signature. Obviously, Dr. Peter McCullough led the way. Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, Ed Dowd, Dr. Pierre Corey, Steve Kirsch are the founding signers of that document. We also have Dr. Kat Lindley and we also have Mary Holland of Children's Health Defense and some of the most outspoken advocates for informed consent and against the disastrous policies of COVID-19 lockdown and the rollout of the vaccine in the United States of America today. And you led that effort, Dr. McCullough. I think those 3 items are where we need to just be laser focused. And it's frustrating to some people that we're moving into these other areas. By the way, JD Vance, you mentioned it was a tell in that interview with Joe Rogan. He said, we can't talk about vaccines. And that might be because JD Vance is heavily invested and has been heavily invested through his investment firm Narya in companies that produce, develop, and roll out mRNA technologies. So when your child's vaccine, when they are retrofitting the childhood vaccine schedule and using the mRNA technology and vaccines for children, you got to look at the conflicts of interest and how, of course, JD Vance, he says he can't talk about vaccines. I think that he might not want to talk about vaccines.
Well, Jen, I want to be fair to, it's a complicated world out there, and we don't know what type of firewalling people have between their investments. And sometimes there's mutual funds or private equity. And honestly, people don't have a lot of choice of what's being invested. But right now, Moderna wouldn't be a very good investment. Their stock has plummeted. Yesterday, Stefan Bainzel just stepped out as, in charge of sales. He's still retaining as the CEO. So, we'd have to be careful. I guess what we're saying, Shannon, I guess we can agree on, is that people who have been put in positions without being elected. So, Vance was chosen by Trump and then he was elected via the ticket. They do
Right.
need public vetting. It's fair for us to vet them. Susie Wiles, you mentioned her. We have a Substack out on her today. She's the daughter of Pat Summerall, who used to be on, football player, and he was a pro football commentator for a long time. I didn't realize that. She's quiet. She's been behind the scenes. Her former firm, the Mercury public relations firm, they have over 500 clients. About 3 were pharmaceutical companies. And again, we just have to do this public vetting, understand who these people are. Prior to the pandemic, I led data safety monitoring boards for big pharma. I did big pharma device consulting.
Fair. Yep.
So, to be fair, so anybody can go on the what's called CMS open payments and look at the track record. I received big pharmaceutical grants for work in kidney disease and diabetes. And people have, reviewed that before. And I said, listen, I stand behind that. I mean, I get research grants and also I was an authority role at a major university health system. So a lot of things got logged under my name.
Sure.
And I'm willing to certainly stand behind that and explain it. So we want to be fair to these individuals, but we also are looking, but Shannon,
you're so much nicer than I am.
but Shannon, we're looking for them to articulate some of these concerns. Listen, we've just gone through a presidential election.
Right.
Neither Trump nor Harris even mentioned a concern regarding vaccine safety.
Well, and this is why I have you on, because you are a statesman, you are a diplomat, you are a truth teller. I'm like, okay, so, and we're going to do a little deep dive on Susie Wiles and just, all public record. Okay. This is all, readily available information so that people know. And of course, the Shannon Joy Show is open for anyone to come in. So JD Vance, Vivek Ramaswamy, Susie Wiles, Donald Trump, RFK, everyone is invited in the Shannon Joy Show.
But Shannon, we have to say, I think this is fair since it was just announced. Trump was criticized as being a misogynist. This, consistently from the left. And, Susie Wiles will be on record as the first female chief of staff. Trump was heavily criticized by the left that he couldn't be around strong women, a strong woman like you or others. And I thought his daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, did a very nice job on TV yesterday saying, listen, she's been a part of this now for 9 years. She's seen this. And to give Trump credit, he did position Susie Wiles. She did run a very successful campaign. And you know what? If she does what we're told she's going to do, and that is keep order in the White House and kind of now, protect America from White House chaos that we saw. I'm all for that.
I don't know, old sharp elbows, Susie Wiles. She's, I love how she's being described as grandmotherly. I'm like, I don't know if grandmotherly would be the way that I would describe Susie Wiles. But again, you're very fair, and this is why I love having you on the show, because you're very fair. You are sober in your analysis, and you're allowing them some time and some room to kind of get things done. They have not even taken the Oval Office. The inauguration hasn't happened. I will say, however, we should be very closely scrutinizing Susie Wiles, because Chief of Staff is ostensibly one of the most powerful positions in Washington, D.C. She is overseeing the schedule of the president. She is overseeing who has access to the president. She is overseeing his cabinet picks, his staff picks, his administration. She's the lady. Okay. She's the one in charge. And so we should be highly scrutinizing Susie Wiles. And I think there's probably going to be a lot more to come out on her as well as we do our deep dives. Dr. McCullough, what would you say would be the most impactful way? I mean, a lot of people are much more optimistic than I am about where this administration is going to go. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I've been a political analyst for over 10 years. So before I was a raging, anti-lockdowner, protesting on every street corner and getting arrested for the mask, falling between my nose and organizing moms all over the country. I was a radio host and I was analyzing politics, and I really went through the Donald Trump administration with a fine-tooth comb. We looked at every continuing resolution, every defense budget, every bill, every executive order, every piece of legislation. And so I tend to be less optimistic than a lot of our colleagues. And I understand that people want hope and they want to believe that he's going to make good on his promises. I'm kind of waiting and watching. What do you think would be the most impactful thing that we could do moving forward to move this administration, right? If they get any inkling that they want to go to the dark side and go back to the lobbyists and do the bidding of the pharmaceutical corporations or anything like that, what do you think would be the most impactful thing that we could do to move our agenda forward in context of this administration, which is conceivably slightly more affable and accepting of us in terms of this discourse than the previous?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's widely expected there'll be a clean sweep. So that means there's 15 cabinet members. For sure, Secretary Xavier Becerra is out. Undersecretary and transgender advocate Richard Levine, also known as Rachel Levine, that he'll be out, and then a sweep across the CDC. So Dr. Marazzo, she's the one that gets the short change. She's only been in office a while, but she was from University of Alabama at Birmingham. Took Fauci's place. That she at NIAID will likely be out, and even the head of the overall National Institutes of Health out. And of course, Mandy Cohen, the CDC director, will be out. The HHS director will indicate these. Now, there's been some other NIH division chiefs that have been fine all the way through. NHLBI, I deal with them a lot, and NIDDK, they were fine. So I think you'll see a clean out in these areas of where there's been great concern. And what we really need is lessons learned. And so, in my field, what I'd be doing if I was heading up HHS or Undersecretary HHS, what I'd do is say, listen, we want a series of Bethesda meetings, and that are going to be led by the CDC, NIH, and FDA. And we're calling academia to Washington to review lessons learned on contagion control and on testing and on therapeutics and vaccines, probably those 4 areas, in the idea of to be better next time. And that method will draw people out, because let me tell you, when academic leaders are told to show up to an NIH meeting, they know their money comes from the NIH. They're going to show up, and they're going to be forced to review the data. And before you know it, you'll see academic institutions start to own these problems. Suddenly Harvard will discover vaccine myocarditis. And I can see this has happened before. So I think strong leadership in that area, that's what I would encourage them to do. That not by executive action. We do need the medical community to come back and fully capitulate, and the government can assist that. And let me tell you something else. Is critical position now is going to be Surgeon General. And let me give you an example. We had a crisis in medicine for decades, up to about 1961, when Luther Terry was installed as Surgeon General. And the crisis was smoking. Doctors and nurses were smoking like fiends and wouldn't admit to the fact that smoking was causing problems, despite it being presented.
Crazy.
Yeah, they smoke in the operating room and promoted cigarettes.
Can I pause you for 1 second? The American Medical Association, the JAMA, used to run ads of doctors smoking cigarettes, and they're like, Dr. So-and-so recommends Lucky Strike for women, pregnant women, to keep them from gaining too much weight or being stressed out during pregnancy. And it just goes to show you how politicized and how these lobby organizations can just get in. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
So you hit it. So in in those decades before, leading up to 1961, it was the tobacco lobby. Right now, it's clearly the biopharmaceutical vaccine lobby running the table. So anyhow, Luther Terry gets in, and he commissions a report, the Surgeon General report on smoking, published in 1964. Now back then, there's no computers.
Okay.
He has 9,000 references, and the conclusion is smoking is harmful. That Surgeon's General report changed medical history. It's very important. It changed medical history. And I think that piece is needed now. We have about the same amount of data on COVID vaccines, and it will take a Surgeon General's report to do this, to really, nail this down. So the Surgeon General choice is going to be very important. Remember, Surgeon General typically is someone who comes out of public health service or the military health services, but doesn't have to be. About a third have been just civilian doctors who have gone in that role, and they must be independent. Now, our previous Surgeon Generals have literally become mouthpieces for the CDC, NIH, and FDA. And the most recent one, he's on his second term, Murthy. Do you know his big initiative hasn't been to improve the health of Americans at all? It's actually been hunting misinformation. Yeah. So the Surgeon General has been completely adrift, has not helped Americans at all. And if Kennedy and Trump are to be successful, they better have a Surgeon General who's really got the capabilities of communicating to the nation and have the trust of the nation, because it's going to be needed. So these are some, I think some important ideas. Let me tell you what needs to happen at the NIH level. This is very important, very important.
Well, before you do that, I mean, we have almost 1,000 viewers on Rumble right now, and we're on many different platforms. I think we should nominate Dr. Peter McCullough for Surgeon General and send that up to the White House right now. I know that you would, but I mean, I know I'm seeing it on the live chat. Everyone is already saying, like, where are you going to be? I think that you should have some type of voice either from the outside or the inside. But I think Surgeon General, let's send that nomination up the flagpole right now. But I think it would be a perfect position.
Well, I can't respond to that because we need to be very respectful to the discretion of the incoming, Secretary of HHS and Undersecretary and the Public Health Service on whoever they nominate for that position. And don't forget, many of these positions need Senate confirmation. But let me say, at the NIH level, this is something very important, Shannon. In my view, we need immediate ban on gain-of-function research. Not just banning the funding for gain-of-function research, we need to ban gain-of-function research. The Biden administration came out in May of 2024 with this legislation on what's called pathogens of dual purpose and of public health concern, meaning that labs in the United States can make deadly viruses, bacteria, and fungi, and they have to follow these loose regulations. In my view, that's wholly unsatisfactory. It's dangerous. And, to my point, what happened yesterday is a bunch of monkeys got out of a biolab and they were roaming around an American neighborhood. This goes to show you, yes, you can find it. I hope somebody can look it up right now, but there's a bunch of macaque monkeys on the loose right now. God knows what type of viruses or diseases they have. But the point is, just like we have a nuclear regulatory commission, and do you remember that? Do you remember that movie Oppenheimer? It's a really good movie.
Yes, great movie.
And remember, Robert Downey Jr. played the role of the person who was in charge of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. We do need a really strict regulation over biolabs. I don't think universities should be doing this in American communities at all. It's super dangerous. I heard an inside word from an insider that even Trump agrees that this should be severely restricted to government, maybe military labs. And it's got to be well away from the public. But gain-of-function research right now is going wild in every state in the country.
Yeah, that's actually terrifying. That's actually terrifying because they are messing with things that should absolutely not be messed with. And South Carolina, the monkeys, thank you, Kelly McCarty, on the live chat. The monkeys are loose in South Carolina. Dr. Peter McCullough is with us today on the Shannon Joy Show. We're so thrilled to have him with us. Would you be open to answering a few questions? I would vet them here on the live chat if you would like. If you guys have some questions and keep them topical in relation to what we have discussed and on point, put them in all caps so that I can see them. And we can go to a quick break. Thank you so much for giving us so much of your time. People are just absolutely, dying to ask you some questions. So if you don't mind, we're going to go to a quick break. We'll come back and we'll finish this out with Dr. Peter McCullough. Make sure you follow him on Twitter, follow his Substack, which is Courageous Discourse. It is one of the best. It is absolute Shannon Joy show prep on a regular basis. And your foundation, people can support all of your work at the foundation. Can you tell them just a bit about the foundation before we go to break?
Right. Foundation supports everything we do. You probably have seen the wonderful work of Nick Hosher from University of Michigan, who is our first fellow for the McCullough Foundation. So go to McCulloughFND.org. This tax-deductible 501c3. Our major pillars of activity are investigative scholarships. So many of the papers that we cite and original work is funded by McCullough Foundation. Media, all of our activity in the media. And then in the courts, I've been supported by McCullough Foundation in nearly 100 court cases fighting for freedom for you. And then finally in our public policy efforts, including, the numbers of times I've gone to Washington. I'm on a standing committee in Arizona multiple times, and houses of legislation all over the country. McCullough Foundation makes it happen. Please consider it, before your end of year tax deductible donations. Absolutely.
And he sees patients every single day. And I have to say, that's one of the areas, you, Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, there are a handful of some of the biggest thinkers and most influential voices, but you're still seeing patients every day, which keeps you totally connected to the people and what's happening to people. And I find that to be something very wonderful about what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to come back. We're going to take some questions. Again, keep it on point, on topic, put it in all caps so that I can see it. And we will finish out the show here with Dr. Peter McCullough. Keep it tuned right here. Without further ado, we're going to bring the amazing Dr. Peter McCullough back into the Joy Virtual Studio. And you guys will notice that I popped into the live chat a link. This is a podcast that features Dr. McCullough. It's a 12 priorities for health in a new administration, right?
Right. I recorded this on America Out Loud News. That's where my podcast is. Also, I do Pulse with Malcolm Out Loud, and that comes out on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. But it just hit the iHeart network. And we go through this together so people can, if you want to go back and have a listen, Malcolm is very good. Now, listen, Malcolm is very pro-Trump. So he's, you and I are.
Everyone is. Listen, yeah.
But listen, we are too. And but I think you and I are more in the middle, where we want to evaluate both sides. We want to clearly understand the issues, but people can enjoy that as well. Thanks for following on. And by the way, America Out Loud is critical for people in Australia, New Zealand, some of these countries where they have such a restriction on free speech now.
Yeah. Well, we love people who love Trump here at the Shannon Joy Show, even though we don't always agree. And as you mentioned, I am much more cautious about where I think this is going, but we need this discourse and we need to be having these conversations. And I'm glad that we can have them with you, Dr. McCullough. We have a lot of questions on the live chat. I want to start with, this always leads. And I think, Dr. McCullough, it's because so many Americans are still suffering with vaccine injuries. And so there are a couple different questions about nattokinase and ivermectin and some of the, obviously your spike detox protocol and how people can heal. What's new in the research? What are you seeing in terms, I'm trying to encapsulate all of those questions into one. But for people who are still struggling with long COVID or COVID-19 vaccine injury, what are you seeing? What's the new research out there that you're looking at?
Long COVID and vaccine injury syndromes overlap, and they largely are the same. The vaccine makes it way worse. And both of them, the problem is the spike protein is in the body. So we don't want to take more vaccines. It doesn't make long COVID get better. It actually gets worse. And there was some long COVID clinics. There was one at Texas Children's in Houston that was actually giving the kids COVID shots and making them sicker with long COVID. Yes, it was terrible. I had some that became bedridden. So we should never take more shots for long COVID because it loads more spike protein in the body.
Right.
What we know now is the first step is people should get a blood test, which is the antibodies against the spike protein. We use the LabCorp extended range assay test. It goes from 0 to 25,000. It's done by a company called Roche. It provides the assay, Roche Alexis system. Everybody should get a spike protein antibody test because it reflects how much spike protein is still in the system. This is how you interpret it, Shannon. 0 to 1,000 is low risk. It means there's probably little or no spike protein in the body. The body has cleared it out. Recently, my co-author, John Leake, in my book, came to our clinic. He said, I want to know, I've had COVID a few times. He didn't take the vaccine.
Yeah.
And John came out at about 800. I said, John, you're good. You're below 1,000. Every study shows low risk. Now, progressively more than 1,000. I've had some of my patients text me at the commercial break. They're at 10, 15, 20,000. We're talking heart damage, blood clots. It's a very important blood test. So everybody get the total antibody against the spike protein. I think the LabCorp is available. That's step one. And now, most people over 1,000 will need what's called McCullough protocol base spike protein detoxification, 3 natural products, nattokinase, bromelain, and curcumin. They now are packaged in trios on Amazon. I advise wellness companies, the chief scientific officer, they have it combined into a single capsule called the Ultimate Spike Detox. Many clinics have their own white label brands. Most people need to be on these over a year to clear out the spike protein. They're taken in between meals. And from the starting doses that you'll see on my website, we commonly double or even quadruple them.
That's wild. So that is the Ultimate Spike Detox. What just happened there? I'm hearing a little bit of feedback. Okay, we're good. Okay, no, that's great. People are talking about nattokinase, and this is certainly something that is on people's minds. What are you seeing in terms of the manifestation of spike protein? What is it?
In the published literature, both the Pfizer and Moderna messenger RNA are physically in the heart, and they are producing spike protein in the heart that causes inflammation, chest pain, fluid around the heart. So one of the most common diagnoses I put in my office is subclinical vaccine myopericarditis, and it's almost always both the heart muscle and pericardium. Now, the additional drug, in addition to the detox, that must be prescribed for that is colchicine. Very important. Colchicine. Colchicine is mandatory for these vaccine chest pain syndromes, vaccine myopericarditis, at least for a year. This is in our guidelines in cardiology for myopericarditis. Colchicine is derived from the petals of a purple flower. It's a natural product. It's generic. It should be just a few dollars at the store. In 2023, the FDA broadly expanded the approval of colchicine for prevention of heart attacks and heart disease anyway. So far beyond our use, we previously used it just in arthritic gout. So colchicine is mandatory. It's probably the most common drug I prescribe in that scenario. For blood thinners, we use traditional blood thinners for patients with blood clots, but they don't go away until we combine them with the detox. So the blood thinners keep the blood clots from not growing, and then the detox, particularly the nattokinase and bromelain, help dissolve the blood clots. That's under our direct observation. Couple more pointers. If any of the blood tests turn positive for autoimmune conditions, the blood ANA, rheumatoid factor, or anti-citrulated peptide is our screen. It's our experience that patients need hydroxychloroquine, typically for 3 or 6 months to clear up the autoimmunity. It seems to work wonderfully. Also works in young people with multi-system inflammatory disease. I've used it down even in children, 6 to 8 years at a pediatric dose. Hydroxychloroquine, very safe and effective. The last thing I'll say is a go-to drug is if there's any signs of persistent SARS-CoV-2 infection, reinfection, what we call vaccine-associated immunodeficiency syndrome. So we're talking swollen lymph nodes, headaches, lancinating pain, skin rashes. All of that indicates that the virus is still alive in the body, replicating even months or years after the documented infection, our go-to drug is ivermectin.
Okay.
And it's ivermectin used at full doses. Someone my size or your size, Shannon, you would probably take 24 milligrams a day for 30 to 90 days. I would take 36 milligrams a day for 30 to 90 days. So these are parts of what we've done in our publications, and we're greatly helping people. But it starts with that critical blood test, the spike antibody.
Okay, so the blood test is your start, guys. So if you're having issues, continued issues, start with that blood test. And we have another question here. As we talked about MAHA and this kind of everything's poisoned, food, air, water, and it is true that we're subjected to a lot of metals, right? Whether it's aluminum, and I'm not sure, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I do have a question here about if people have, are there dangerous amounts of metals in our bodies? And do you think that we can have, too many? And can that manifest in certain, health impacts? And the question here is, what is the recommendation for, protections or protocols for aluminum, for example, or lead, or any other type of environmental metals exposure that humans are subjected to?
Isn't that interesting? I started with the comment, in the late 19th century of mothers using mercury teething compounds for babies' teeth. Can you imagine that?
I can't.
Yeah. I mean, so the whole field of heavy metal toxicology in the body is once an advanced field. We have like an environmental center here I use in Dallas for advanced testing. The testing is fraught with difficulties. This is not something for primary care. The cardinal features are bone marrow suppression, people who have, very abnormal CBCs, neurologic function with lead, peripheral neuropathies. I'm concerned always about lithium as a metal. By the way, the NIH just tested lithium as a treatment for long COVID. I cringed when I saw that, because lithium accrues in the body and causes renal failure. That's the reason why we don't really use it for bipolar disorder anymore. People who are over administering, for instance, silver or copper, I greatly worry about these. These are just trace minerals. We shouldn't be gobbling tons of these. And of course, people are worried about mercury and aluminum in vaccines. I personally took 40 flu shots because I had to be on medical staff for all these years. Gosh knows what types of heavy metals I've accrued. But I want people to understand that this is not an easy thing. They don't just pull out of the body. If you really have concerns, very abnormal CBC, strange neurologic symptoms, go to an environmental center. We have one here in Dallas. It's a terrific place, and they get industrial contracts to measure this. So
okay, all right. So you don't go order the test off the internet for metals, and I've been tempted to do that. I just want to know, like, I had, took vaccines when I was little, and then you just wonder. You're like, do I have any, lingering impacts? But it's on everyone's mind. Okay. All right. So
I want to mention one more metal that I am aware of the literature on that accumulates in the body, and that's called gadolinium. We actually give that as a contrast, MRI contrast agent. The Japanese have published on this. With every administration of gadolinium, the human brain gets a little brighter because the gadolinium settles in the brain. So, those of you who have gotten MRIs, be cautious about pushing your doctors for more and more MRIs. I'm very judicious on ordering MRIs because I know each dose of gadolinium accumulates in the human body. I had it once myself at University of Michigan when I went for a medical problem. So, be cautious with these things. It is more natural to have the body be free of these metals than keep taking them on.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Well, Dr. Peter McCullough, I don't want to take much more of your time. I mean, you were very generous today. Really, really appreciate you and everything that you've done. Make sure you guys check out that podcast. It's, 12 initiatives for health reform that this administration can take up. I did put the link into the live chat, and I will add it to the show description so that you guys can all grab it. As we work our way out, Dr. Peter McCullough, anything that you want to get off your chest at the end and let people know, anything that I missed in the interview?
Well, I just want to encourage everybody, go to Courageous Discourse Substack, sign up. You're going to get a free email every day with graphical abstracts, analyses. People say, well, where are the studies? I said, listen, they're all on Courageous Discourse Substack. Go to America Out Loud News in my 5 p.m. Wednesday Pulse with Malcolm. We address questions there every week. If you want to submit questions, they're curated. And then McCullough Report every 2 p.m. Eastern on Saturday or Sunday on America Out Loud. Go on Twitter and, follow me. I have the #1 Twitter account of doctors who see patients. And, I've been very careful. I want people to understand this. Medicine and politics really don't mix very well. So be very wary of doctors, at political events. We saw, and I want to point this out. We saw a doctor writing for the journal Nature say that things have gone very dark since the Trump administration won, for instance. That's completely inappropriate to have any political comments in a medical journal. It's also completely inappropriate for doctors to be showing up at presidential victory parties with the campaign. So you saw the camera scanning around, and you saw some doctors there. It's like, doctors need to be objective and removed from politics in order to correctly advise the country. So I'd be very wary of any doctor who showed up at Trump's victory parties and what have you. We want to have very careful vetting and be dealing with experts, not doctors who are trying to weasel in and be political operatives.
Yeah. And, that's one unfortunate part of this is that there is, and I understand it. People want to make a difference and they want to kind of be part of this administration. But, when as lay people and consumers and citizens, when you want to get great information, you really want to try to find independent people if you can, right? And that doesn't mean that it's perfect, but when people get overtly super, super political, I just said the same thing to my audience yesterday, Dr. McCullough, in my industry and media. I cannot believe how many news outlets, conservative media news outlets, that were popping champagne and toasting each other and actively, and I get it, we just accept it in conservative media because everyone does it. But for me, I'm I would never do that. I just would never, for me, I feel like it would be inappropriate. So I hear what you're saying there. And I think that, the hyper partisan nature of everything, left and right. Okay. Both.
Well, for sure. So listen, if Harris won, I can tell you the commissioner of the FDA wouldn't have been there. We wouldn't have had this. Remember, anybody who's kind of, in an obsequious fashion, lingering around a 3 a.m. presidential candidate victory party, that person is going to try to show up for Senate confirmation. You can tell right there. There's all kinds of conflicts. There's all kinds of prearrangements. We want people to be independent, vetted. Let's keep medicine and politics separate so we can get ourselves, beyond the pandemic and on the right course.
All right. Very good. Dr. Peter McCullough, follow him on Twitter right now. That's where he does a lot of his work. And absolutely subscribe to Courageous Discourse. Go do it. Go do it right now. All right. Dr. McCullough, thank you so much for being with us today. You are the best.
Thank you.